Alright guys, well, I had originally recorded a different intro to this video, but I'm going to stick my foot in my mouth right now. Luckily my son's here to help me, keep me sane. This is Abe. He's a trucker boy. He's obsessed with trucks. You like big trucks? Mm-hmm. How much? Like 2? Mm-hmm. He likes them that much, guys. So anyhow, what happened today in my video, I said how I prefer new trucks because of dependability, and that's a huge issue for me, guys. And I said, to this day, I had not had any problems with any of my trucks, blah, blah, blah. Lo and behold, guys, I was working on my side hustle, which I'm going to talk about in the next video in the series. But what happened was I was fully loaded, going up some gnarly backhill or backcountry roads, and something happened to my clutch that I got to figure out right now. We just pulled the truck into the shop, and it basically would not disengage. So luckily I'm a good driver, or good enough, that I was able to get my truck turned around, and I was able to dump, and it was pretty gnarly terrain, but I just got it back home. We're going to figure out what happened to it. I think it's something minor. And then also on this guy, had a little metal tab break off, but it's just a little tiny piece, and it's going to take like 10 minutes to fix. So in the video, guys, I talk about weak points. This is a prime example of how every truck has them. There's a million different parts on these trucks. So I hope you guys enjoy the video, and here it is. Hey, what's up, guys? So today's video is going to be kind of a long one. We're going to be talking about something that is kind of a hard thing to figure out whether or not you want to do when you're starting a trucking business, and that is whether or not you want to buy a new or used truck. So John just showed up. We're going to get him going. He set it out to go haul some dirt today. I don't have any trucking today. I got some other stuff I got to take care of. I got to go get our dozer fixed. How's the truck on fuel and DEF?
Says it's half full on fuel and about a little more than a quarter tank on DEF.
Okay. I'm going to pick some DEF hauling out today. Alright guys, well John's headed out. You can see me in the background.
Just me there?
Yeah, it's just going to be you today. Oh, Ryan might be there.
Alright, well he was saying he had another job this Monday.
Oh, okay, that might just be you. So I think we're going to have a busy week this week. Okay, now before we go into like whether or not a new truck's better, used truck better, pros and cons, all that stuff, I'm going to talk real quick about my story. When I first got my Peterbilt, it was kind of like a long road to get there. I was working night shift, day shift. Day shift I was driving truck. Night shift I was working at San Diego Airport doing electronic stuff. Had my equipment rental going on the side. It was a busy time in my life. And I wasn't quite sure that I wanted to do the trucking yet, but I've always wanted to. Ever since I was a little kid. It's in my blood. My dad was big trucks his whole life. Peterbilts for the most part. He had cab overs, transfers. I just loved them. The smell of asphalt to me is still like sentimental. My dad passed away over 10 years now, and I don't know, it's just something about trucking that appeals to me. And so I wanted to do it. And so anyhow, I started reaching out to some of the local dealerships, and I don't know if they didn't take me seriously. I just wasn't very impressed. So I kind of reached out to some other dealerships. I ended up reaching out to Rush Peterbilt up in Sylmar, which is kind of on the outskirts of Los Angeles. And I got real lucky. This guy named Steve Ballenberg responded, and I'm sure I've given Steve a few gray hairs, but this guy's just hands down like one of the best salesmen I've ever dealt with. All right, guys, if you have any questions about getting a Peterbilt at all, call Steve. Put his information down in the description below. This is the guy that got me to pull the trigger on my first Super 10 back there. I got so nervous about it. We talked it over a couple times, and I ended up going with it, and I'm so glad I did, because my business is on a completely different level. If I hadn't got these trucks, my business probably would have failed by now, because the equipment rentals slowed down for quite a bit. And these trucks are like the only thing that has kept my business going. So Steve, he'll do his homework, he'll figure out your application, and then he'll basically list out everything that you guys need. And he won't BS you. This truck right here was kind of a hassle. It's got a high-low PTO pump on it. You don't see heavy hauls that pull end dumps very often. It's a really cool setup. Alright, so getting back to the video, pro number 1 is the warranty. You guys, warranty is a big deal. A lot of people complain about the warranty, say it's not good, blah, blah, blah. Whenever these trucks break, guys, they break in a big way. It's not usually something small. I remember growing up, my dad, it was a different era back then. Um, old trucks were a completely different animal than they are now. It was doable to fix those things. Now, there's a lot of finicky stuff involved and a lot of stuff that's above my pay grade. I remember my dad spending nights just working on his trucks trying to get them ready. But they were fixable back then. Now there's stuff that's still fixable, but computerized stuff, it's just, you guys need a lot of different tools to work on these trucks now. And so for me, warranty's a big deal because I don't want to buy the $5,000-$10,000 scanners, at least not yet. There's a lot of specialty tools that you need. It's just a different animal nowadays. 40 years ago, yeah, used truck is okay because you could fix it with a wrench and some duct tape. But now it's not quite the same thing. All right, new smell. I say this kind of like in a half-hearted, joking manner, but in all seriousness, guys, this video is catered towards guys that are trying to start a business and trying to make a name for themselves. Contractors, they like to see a big shiny truck show up on time. And when that happens, it does a couple things. It makes you look like you know what you're doing. It makes you look like you take care of your equipment. It makes you look like you take matters seriously. And so guys that already have like an established reputation, I don't think it's important that you have a big, nice, shiny, beautiful new truck, because the contractors that you deal with, they already know who you are. They already know what kind of trucker you are, and they're not as concerned on whether or not you have a beautiful truck. So having that shiny truck just kind of helps you get in the door and establish a relationship with contractors. So the big one for the new truckers is out there is that it has to be dependable. And when you guys get a new truck, it's probably going to be more dependable than a used one. Because what happens when you show up to a job site, let's say you have an old truck that's kind of a beater that's falling apart. Let's say you truck for this new company for 4 days, and then they don't have work for 2 weeks, which is fine, that happens. And then they call you up and say, hey, we need your truck for another 3 days. And then you say, oh, I'm really sorry, my truck broke down. Guess what, guys? Whoop, you're instantly to the back of the line in their book. And so until you have that established relationship, it's really important that you guys have a dependable truck. And so for the new truckers out there, dependability is a huge issue. All right, so con number 1 is the price. Can't get around it. The truck's just going to cost more. That's just the way it is. So that's why it's important to find a good salesman that's going to build you exactly the truck that you guys want, so you don't regret dropping that fat stack of cash on that truck. Because once you buy that truck, it's yours. Once you sign those papers, it's yours. So you need to make sure that it's the truck you want. Con number 2, the government. The government's no joke, guys. The FET tax, and especially if you live in California, you're going to have a high sales tax. It's just money on top of money on top of money, and it ends up being a huge deal. The amount you pay in taxes on these trucks is just ridiculous. Oh, and then in California, you have like ridiculously high registration rates too. That's why trucking costs so much in California. But that's con number 2, taxes. All right, so con number 3, guys, is figuring out the truck. This one's not a big deal. It doesn't take very long. But typically, like a used truck, if you talk with the previous owner, they might be able to point you in the right direction. They might have already discovered all the ins and outs, and they can let you know what's funny about the truck, what's not, what's normal. All 3 of my trucks guys, they drive differently, and it just takes time to figure it out. So it's not a huge deal, but you got to figure out like at what angle to let the air out of your bags to dump, just different stuff like that. How much you can load up front, how much to taper it off to the back. I don't know, just all that stuff. But it just takes time. So pro number 1, guys, is obviously going to be the price of a used truck. I would say typically they're going to run anywhere from 100 to 150,000, depending on the truck. I know when I was looking, I spent a long time. I almost pulled the trigger on a used Kenworth. So it was like 115,000. It was a nice enough truck. It looked good, but I came to discover that almost all used trucks have kind of like the same amount of miles. And that kind of made me nervous because I know all the new diesels they don't last as long as they used to. And the exhaust filter systems and all that stuff, those are super pricey to replace. So that's what ended up making me go to a new truck, is I didn't want to have to deal with rebuilding a motor. I didn't want to have to deal with downtime, because downtime is what kills you guys in this business. If you guys have like 3 or 4 days of downtime, it's already not worth having a used truck for the month. And so because you guys will lose out on, I don't know, anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000 profit here in California if you're down a week. And so it's just not worth it to me. So for me, I ended up going with a new truck. All right, so weak points. This one's just an opinion of mine. I don't have any facts behind it that can base any truth behind this, but I feel like typically when you buy a used truck, the previous owner has already found the weak points in the truck and has had them resolved. There is a chance that it had so many weak points that that's why they're getting rid of it. But I feel like a used truck's going to already have had its major issues resolved. Now, so that's kind of one of the perks of a used truck is that the previous owner, has already addressed those issues. And a lot of times with a used truck, a lot of guys like to customize these things to make them stand out, to make it look like their own truck. And so when they put on all these aftermarket lights and stuff like that, they look really good. And so that's another perk, is that the weak points have already been addressed in the truck. All right, guys. Well, I think I've talked about the FET quite a bit already in this video. The poor soul that bought the truck before you will have already paid the FET. It doesn't need to be paid twice on the truck. It's just once. And so that's a huge deal because the FET ends up being close to, I think, like $18,000 or $20,000. I still think it's worth it for a new truck, but that is a huge pro of buying a used truck, is you don't have to pay that tax twice. All right, guys, here's con number one. This is the big one. History. You don't know how the truck was taken care of before. A lot of fleet vehicles will have taken care of, but if you guys are buying from a private seller, you don't know what kind of care they took of the vehicle. For me, if you guys look behind me, I got a bunch of royal purple sitting right there. I try to take really good care of my trucks. I try to do the best I can. I try to put good oil in them. I try to do it regularly. We just try to take really good care of our stuff, but not everybody's like that. And so, these engines, they wear out a lot sooner than the old engines used to. The regen cycles are just brutal on these motors. And that's one of the things you got to roll the dice on, because you can't tell. You don't know how well the truck was taken care of. So that's the big con number one. These things have like a million Zerg fittings on them. They need to be greased regularly. Everything needs to be checked on these trucks. Otherwise, they don't run very good. And, you might have had a mechanic do a quick tune-up on the truck before it goes to get sold. And so it might run great for a little bit, but you guys just never know. All right, guys. Well, here's con number two. This is kind of a big one, too. Dependability. On a used truck, you never really know how dependable it's going to be. Hopefully they are, but if they're not, that can cause some serious problems. Because let's say you guys get on with a new contractor. You finally get a good lead. You follow it up. You make that good first impression. They're happy with you. You truck for them for about a week. And then typically, you guys, contractors will be real busy, and then they'll have like 2-3 weeks of downtime where they don't need you. So let's say you did 4 or 5 days worth of work for them. They're super pleased. They're super happy. And then what happens? They call you up. And let's say your truck broke down, guys, and you're still not like an established trucker for them. And you have to say, I'm really sorry, my truck broke down. I'm trying to get it fixed as fast as I can. Guess what, guys? If you don't have a good relationship with them yet, back of the line. So this is why it's so important for new truckers to have a dependable truck. Because if you don't, when that truck breaks down and you're trying to make a new client, when you look bad, it just instantly destroys like all credibility. Okay, guys, so here's con number 3. A lot of used dump trucks, guys, that you see for sale in Truck Trader and all those places, they were not originally spec'd to be a dump truck. A lot of trucks came from all over the road trucks, and you can tell typically because trucks that are spec'd from the factory to be a dump truck, they'll have what's called a double liner chassis. All of my trucks, even my heavy haul, has a double liner chassis. And what this allows you to do, no, I'm not saying go dump on angles, guys, but my trucks can handle much more of an angle than trucks that are a single liner chassis because the frame is much more rigid, especially when I let the air out of the bags. I've had to dump on some pretty gnarly angles. I'll show you guys a picture right now. And I've even done worse than that. I'm not saying go do that, guys. I don't want to be responsible if your truck tips over. But I've had to dump on some pretty gnarly scenarios where the truck just stays put. The double liner chassis do not have as much flex as the single liners. And you guys will be able to tell real easy which one's which, because the single liner frames will have a big fat piece of square stock above the frame that's like U-bolted to it, that the dump bed sits on top of. And that's because the frame's just not strong enough to handle all the weight of the dump bed once they're fully loaded. Because once those dump beds are fully loaded, if you got a truck like mine, you know, it holds like a little over 16 tons legally. And then you got the weight of the bed, which I'd imagine is, I don't know, 3,000 pounds. And so you're lifting up, you know, 39,000 pounds on that frame. And so if you get a little bit of flex going, it gets scary pretty quick. And so anyhow, that's one thing to look out for. Is typically, or not typically, but a lot of used trucks are not going to be spec'd to be dump trucks. And so will they work as a dump truck? Yes. Are they as nice as a truck that was originally spec'd to be a dump truck? I don't think so. Alright guys, that's about going to wrap this video up. I pretty much just want to talk about 3 pros, 3 cons for each of the new and used trucks. There's a lot more that I could talk about. If you guys have any questions at all, drop them down in the comments below. I'll try and do my best to answer them. My next video, guys, is going to be about side hustle. Sounds kind of funny, but there's a lot of extra money to be made on the side. This is kind of one of my trade secrets. I don't want to talk too much about it to give away too much information in case you guys try to poach some of my business down here in the San Diego area. But basically what it comes down to is you never want to go home empty at the end of the day. And I'll explain that to you guys in the next video. Alright guys, well, we found the culprit. This little guy is not engaging like it's supposed to. This is what adjusts the play in the clutch, and it just free spins. It's not supposed to do that. So I think what's been happening as the clutch has been going around and around, it's just been slowly like pushing the throwout bearing back and basically not allowing the clutch pedal to do what it's supposed to. So when I was pushing the clutch pedal in, it wasn't pushing on anything because the bearing was released all the way back. Easy fix.
Hopefully.
No, this is the problem for sure. It better be. So it's like
You're fired.
It's like a $30, $40 part. So I'm gonna go grab it tomorrow. The end.